Accordingly, Samuel was inoculated, and so was Mr. Walter, a son-in-law of Cotton Mather. Dr. Boylston, likewise, inoculated many persons, and while hundreds died, who had caught the contagion from the garments of the sick, almost all were preserved, who followed the wise physician's advice. But the people were not yet convinced of their mistake. One night, a destructive little instrument, called a hand grenade, was thrown into Cotton Mather's window, and rolled under grandfather's chair. It was supposed to be filled with gunpowder, the explosion of which would have blown the poor minister to atoms. But the best informed historians are of opinion, that the grenade contained only brimstone and ossif and was meant to plague Cotton Mather with a very evil perfume. This is no strange thing in human experience. Men, who attempt to do the world more good, than the world is able entirely to comprehend, are almost invariably held in bad odor. But yet, if the wise and good man can wait a while, either the present generation or posterity, will do him justice. So it proved, in the case which we have been speaking of. In after years, when inoculation was universally practiced, and thousands were saved from death by it, the people remembered old Cotton Mather, then sleeping in his grave. They acknowledged that the very thing, for which they had so reviled and persecuted him, was the best and wisest thing he ever did. "Grandfather, this is not an agreeable story," observed Clara. "No, Clara," replied grandfather. "But it is right that you should know what a dark shadow this disease threw over the times of our forefathers. And now, if you wish to learn more about Cotton Mather, you must read his biography, written by Mr. Peabody, of Springfield. You will find it very entertaining and instructive, but perhaps the writer is somewhat too harsh in his judgment of this singular man. He estimates him fairly, indeed, and understands him well, but he unriddles his character rather by acuteness than by sympathy. Now, his life should have been written by one, who, knowing all his faults, would nevertheless love him, so grandfather made an end of Cotton Mather, telling his auditors that he died in 1728, at the age of 65, and bequeathed the chair to Elisha Cook. This gentleman was a famous advocate of the people's rights. The same year, William Burnet, a son of the celebrated Bishop Burnet, arrived in Boston, with the commission of governor. He was the first that had been appointed since the departure of Colonel Shute. Governor Burnet took up his residence with Mr. Cook, while the Province House was undergoing repairs. During this period, he was always complimented with a seat in grandfather's chair, and so comfortable did he find it, that on removing to the Province House, he could not bear to leave it behind him. Mr. Cook, therefore, requested his acceptance of it. "I should think," said Lawrence, "that the people would have petitioned the king always to appoint a native-born New Englander to govern them. Undoubtedly it was a grievance," answered grandfather, "to see men placed in this station, who perhaps had neither talents nor virtues to fit them for it, and who certainly could have no natural affection for the country. The king generally bestowed the governorships of the American colonies upon needy noblemen, or hangers-on at court, or disbanded officers. The people knew that such persons would be very likely to make the good of the country subservient to the wishes of the king. The legislature, therefore, endeavored to keep as much power as possible in their own hands, by refusing to settle a fixed salary upon the governors. It was thought better to pay them according to their deserts." "Did Governor Burnet work well for his money?" asked Charlie. Grandfather could not help smiling at the simplicity of Charlie's question. Nevertheless, it put the matter in a very plain point of view. He then described the character of Governor Burnet, representing him as a good scholar, possessed of much ability, and likewise of unspotted integrity. His story affords a striking example, how unfortunate it is for a man, who is placed as ruler over a country, to be compelled to aim at anything but the good of the people. Governor Burnet was so chained down by his instructions from the king, that he could not act as he might otherwise have wished. Consequently, his whole term of office was wasted in quarrels with the legislature. "I am afraid, children," said grandfather, "that Governor Burnet found but little rest or comfort in our old chair. Here he used to sit, dressed in a coat which was made of rough, shaggy cloth outside, but of smooth velvet within.